All right. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to episode 16. This will be 16 once it finally comes out of In the 11. Today, in the 11 with us, we have a special guest, a friend of mine, Khedive McIntosh, right? Did I say that right?
McIntosh, yeah.
All right. And I'm excited for this one. I was just speaking to Khedive before we hopped on here that this is going to be cool because I'm going to get to learn his story kind of at the same time as you, the listener, are going to be able to hear his journey and his career so far in football. So it's going to be really exciting for us. And sit back, relax, and let's get it going. Khedive, how you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm glad to be here. I really appreciate this, and I really love your content. So I'm really glad I can make an appearance.
Yeah, awesome. We're happy to have you. It's much appreciated that you say that too. I always love it when like people who are actually doing the same kind of thing are interested and value the stuff that I'm putting out. So that means a lot. But let's kind of get into what you've been up to. So I know that you started off. So are you originally from New Jersey?
So I was born in Brooklyn, New York, but
Okay,
quite early, my parents moved to New Jersey.
gotcha. And then is that where you grew up your whole kind of youth and played youth soccer in Jersey?
I actually left for boarding school at the age of 10.
Ah,
Yeah. So
where'd you go to boarding school?
I went to the Fay School in Massachusetts at 10 for middle school, and then I went to the Lawrenceville Prep in like near outside of Princeton, New Jersey, for high school.
Hmm.
So yeah, pretty unique story. I've been a lot of different places. So yeah,
And so a lot of different places, but even from the beginning, you knew like football is what it is for you. You know, football is the love. It's what we're gonna be chasing.
yeah, I think so. From a very early age, I knew that I wanted to do it as a job because that's all I really thought about. Growing up as a kid, I was always into sports, and I was always into different things, but football was always that one thing that was constant, that I really knew that I loved. I always wanted to be a part of my life. So yeah.
Yeah. So when you were in boarding school and when you were then at Lawrenceville, did you also play club or like academy, or is it just through the schools you were at?
So before I played my first year of ODP. I don't know if you're familiar with that program.
Yeah.
I tried out in New Jersey, and I actually didn't make it my first year. And then I actually went to boarding school, and I registered for Massachusetts ODP,
Hmm.
and I made the state team, and then actually played against New Jersey ODP in the like regional tournament and stuff like that, which is quite interesting because a lot of those players I knew and played with or played against.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that was my first kind of competitive, like, yeah, really good competitive soccer.
Gotcha.
Hmm.
So then we finish up school, and what's the thought process for you? Is it trying to go pro at that point, when you're 17, 18, or is it let's go to college? Like where's your head at?
At this point, I didn't, because I've never really played, for youth academy growing up. I
Hmm.
never really knew of any outlets outside of America. And quite early, my pathway was I always wanted to play in Europe, and I always thought that I would have to start, go through college soccer, go to the MLS, and then from there
Make
go
your
and
way
play in
over,
Europe.
yeah.
So that was kind of always my vision, especially when I got into high school. Um, so yeah, I think my aim was to get a scholarship to go play college soccer. That was my number one goal at that time, at least. I really
Hmm.
didn't know of anything else, or really didn't think about anything else. So yeah.
So how did that change? Obviously, since then, that mindset has changed for you, and you've realized that that's not always what has to be the route for players. Like what was the moment where you realized like, oh, maybe I didn't have to do it this way, or there is a different way of going about it.
I think the biggest thing for me was I learned from experience. So I think there was a moment where I was playing college soccer. I'd reached my goal, played college soccer, and I was at Temple University at the time. So it was my second year, and I just realized that wasn't where I was and kind of how college soccer was set up.
Hmm.
It wasn't even that conducive to get to the next level, which was the MLS. I already had friends who had been drafted from Syracuse, and had friends who were in the drafting process from Temple and stuff like that. And I realized that where I was at the moment wasn't going to be a really good way to get to where I wanted to be.
Yeah.
And especially overseas, I realized quite late that it was better to it would have been better to maybe even scratch college soccer altogether and try my luck overseas in a youth academy. But again, I made that. It was quite funny because I made that to myself. Like no one else really, no expert or no analyst had yet come out and said that.
Hmm.
And it was a big gamble. I was leaving school 2 years in, and I had a lot of I have a lot of people who doubted and were concerned, and of course it's
Yeah.
it's a big thing, especially because I was living the goal at least I wanted. I was playing college soccer. They thought that I could have kept going and kept playing and stuff like that, and I don't know, I just took a risk. That was the, I think, biggest moment for me as a player, like my turning point, I think. And I'm really glad I made the decision.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. That you mentioned such an important thing is you really have to take risks with this. Whether you take the route that you did or any route that you try and take to become a professional in this, it's going to involve you sacrificing a lot and risking a lot.
Oh, yeah.
And there's going to be countless of those types of conversations that you just mentioned where you speak about your goals and what your aspirations are with people. Could be family, could be friends, could be just any old person that you speak to, and you're going to be met with a lot of pushback on that. And it's a really difficult thing, but you mentioned something important there as well, is that you learned by doing. You learned by taking the leap, and by, it wasn't really anyone held your hand and said this is the way to do it. It was, all right, where I'm at now isn't working, so let me figure out a new different way to try and reach my goal.
That's
And
true.
so that was you. So you started at Syracuse, right? You went there as a freshman, and then maybe talk to us a little bit about what made you decide to leave Syracuse and go to Temple, and then further on down the road deciding, okay, I'm not going to come back to Temple and it's time to go chase the thing full time.
Okay. I think my time at Syracuse was a big learning curve. Like I said, I never really played youth academy. I had the chance to in high school for New York Red Bulls, but I wasn't able to make trainings because I was at boarding school and I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't drive yet. So I couldn't, go every day and they had weekly requirements of players and stuff like that. So I really had to turn it down. And it was quite tough to even get recruited to Syracuse because at the time, Syracuse had come off a Final Four appearance and they were ranked third in the country.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, despite unpopular belief, I actually got recruited through an ID camp, which, if a lot of players will tell you
Yeah.
don't go there. That's
That's
just
not
a
the way
money
to do it.
making
Yeah.
thing. Yeah. And it was quite funny at the time because, I was never part of the in crowd. People talk about connections as football, and I never really had any. I didn't. My parents didn't know much. They're immigrants to America, so they didn't really know anybody. Um, my 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 boarding school wasn't a well-known soccer school. It was more of academics. I had classes 6 days a week, and that's what they focused on, just academics.
Hmm.
So, even then it was quite tough as well. They were really good for D3 connections, but I always knew, I had bigger aspirations. And yeah, I went to an ID camp. I think it was January. And of course, my D camps, I had to pay. Me and my dad had to drive up there all by ourselves,
Yeah.
pay for the hotel. And, my biggest thing was just trying to get noticed. I remember it was quite tough because at the time I was like a center midfielder or attacking midfielder. And obviously, when you go to these camps, everyone's a forward, everyone's a midfielder,
Hmm.
and teams needed left and right backs. So I said, well, this is a chance to get me on the field more
Oh,
than
yeah.
the other kids because they have to take turns, and it's like, and you have to sub yourself in and out. So of course, people are going to be greedy with playing time. So I was like, you know what? Okay, I'll be a right back, and yeah, I did quite well. I played right back more like a attacking midfielder, but I did quite well. And I remember at the end of that camp, I think it was right after I scored two volleys in a row in like a small sided game. The coaches came up to me. They subbed me out, and the coaches came up to me and asked me, who do you play for? And the funniest thing, I told them I was like, I don't have a club really at the time,
Mm.
and they were like shocked, kind of. And then they were like, "Oh, do you have a personal trainer?" And I laughed. And I was like, "No, it was just me and my dad, just
Yeah.
kicking around." And then they invited me to come back to another training, another ID camp. But this time, at least they showed interest because I didn't have to pay for this one,
Mm.
which was a good sign.
Yeah.
This one was in May, and it was I think it was an ID camp where they taken some of the players who they had seen from previous ID camps,
Hmm.
and they put them all into one kind of like all-star camp, I would say. And so, I met players from England, players from Denmark, players from Texas were there. They, people, players from FC Dallas, you know, players who already had
Yeah.
made appearances in USL leagues and stuff like that. And I was just some kid from New Jersey that just I just went to boarding school.
Found his way.
Yeah, found his way, and they ended up only taking two players out of thousands of kids, and it was actually quite funny. It was me and a goalkeeper who actually played in the same league as I did in for my boarding school.
Ah.
He played for Matchfit FC. Um, yeah, so it was amazing, and I got signed as a like a wing back. It was a cool experience because at this camp, the last one, we got to play some of the starters from the Syracuse team,
Hmm.
which is really good. And a lot, like I said, a lot of these players ended up getting drafted. Some of them are MLS champions now,
Hmm.
and it was crazy. And like I said, I think my first year at Syracuse was a huge culture shock. Um, Personally, I believe I didn't perform at my best because I think I'd been overwhelmed. I think I had I was only 18 at the time, coming in with a freshman class where there's only three of us who I think were 18. Everyone else was either 20 or higher, coming
Mm.
from England,
Yeah.
Germany, Denmark, Sweden.
Yeah. They're like seasoned pros, and
Yeah,
they're
some of
just
them
coming
had
into the
played.
environment ready to go, and you're still trying to figure it out.
No, it's true, and some of them had made one or two appearances. Especially this was the time when the NCAA regulations were still quite lax in terms
Mhm.
of who can play and who can't. So I did my research, and some of these guys had played one or two appearances in the Bundesliga, and stuff like that. And I'm just a guy.
Just a kid from New
I'm just
Jersey.
yeah, I'm just a guy from New Jersey who played club soccer in New Jersey in Jackson all his life, you know, and I think that really knocked my confidence, and I didn't play a single game, and I quite hated it because this was also my first time really competing,
Hmm.
and it kind of showed you the difference between being on a team that's all your friends and everyone's quite nice, and then being on a team where everyone's fighting for spots.
Yeah.
Your biggest competition is your teammate, and I couldn't adjust. So, fair enough. I got quite left behind a bit, and I had to really take a look at myself because, this is the first time I really had to overcome adversity. I wasn't playing. I was undersized. I was only about 145 pounds, 140 pounds, soaking wet,
Hmm.
and I was playing with these big guys. I think the oldest player on our team at the time was about 25, you know,
Yeah.
and yeah, it was a huge jump, and it was a good learning curve. I definitely wasn't ready for it at the time, but I tried my best to make the biggest leaps, and I started doing well to where like in my um, pre like spring season,
Hmm.
I made a couple games. I did well, and I kind of caught the coaches by surprise because, like I said, I think I didn't play up to my ability most of the year.
Hmm.
And at the end of it, he sat me down and said, I really don't see you in my plans for the next season. And he even said, I don't think you know you are a hard worker and stuff like that. And I was very, that took me back because the whole time when I didn't play, I tried everything I could to kind of get ahead. I didn't really go out. I, didn't really party and stuff like that. I
Hmm.
stayed in. I did extra sessions on my own with the strength and conditioning coach. And, I think that was the first time I really stuck up for myself. And it was quite intimidating because it was the whole coaching staff. And like I said, they were a huge D1 program. I told him, I was like, I hear what you're saying, but I have to kindly disagree. I haven't been able to live up to my potential. I think that's because of my confidence, but I think I've been putting in the work more than anybody else, and I don't like to compare myself to other players, but I've been putting in work, 3 times a day. I'm in the gym as much as I could, especially because I was very new to gym workouts.
Yeah.
Before I was some small lanky kid who just liked to play soccer. So weight training was new for me. I took it head on as much as I could. And I was always the fittest, well, one of the fittest, top three. And yeah, and it was quite, I was quite mad at the time because I felt overlooked,
Hmm.
and I remember having like a long phone call with my mom, just like angry. I was mad at where I was and stuff like that. And I told myself, well, you know, you're going to, this is part of it. Not every team you're going to go to, not every place you're going to go to, you're going to excel, or you're not even going to get the chance. That can't stop me. And I remember this is when I started getting to like, kind of looking at other players' careers and realizing setbacks. And I think at the time I really took a look at Kevin De Bruyne, who
Yeah.
at the time was at Chelsea on the bench, didn't get any playing time. He was left out of the team, and he had to actually go back to the Bundesliga. And it was a huge, people say it was a huge step back in his career. And I kind of took a page of that book and told myself, you know, I can't let this define me.
Yeah.
So I transferred quite late, very late actually. I think I was, and this was as well as tough because, like I said, I was lucky to even be there. I didn't have any contacts. I was a 0-star recruit on Top
Hmm.
Drawer Soccer. I didn't play games. I didn't have any game film as well. I didn't even have any game film to show Syracuse. I
Yeah.
just came to the IB camp. So I remember one of my friends at the time, Tarek, who actually was also from Jackson, played with Tyler Johnson as well. He I got in contact with him because he was at Temple University at the time,
Hmm.
and so I went down there and I went to a spring season game, and I literally walked up to the coaches, introduced myself, and said I'm looking to transfer. I'm coming here, at Syracuse at the moment, and it was quite nerve wracking because, of course, I was very late. They already had their freshman recruits coming in and stuff like that. And lucky enough, they said, well, come from Syracuse, so you must be of good quality. Tarek also put in a good word, which was lucky enough. Again,
Hmm.
another my first connection I really
Yeah.
had. And they said, you know what? I took a gamble as well because I had transferred to Temple academically without a positive confirmation that I was on the team.
Mhm.
All I had was, they said, you can be with us in preseason. If we like what we see, we'll take you. And I was like, okay. And like I said, a big, huge risk because a lot, I realized I was transferring schools, changing my whole life again on a what if.
Yeah.
And, I spent the summer training my butt off, I was in the gym on the training pitch. I played summer leagues and stuff like that, just getting myself ready. And I took the chance when it came. I signed to Temple University, and yeah, never looked back. I actually started some of the preseason matches, and I played in about half the games in at Temple University, and it was quite a different setup as well because Temple wasn't as highly ranked as Syracuse.
Mhm.
Syracuse was, like I said, at the time top 3 in the country. At one point, we were number 1 in the nation for a couple weeks, and Temple was different conference. I went from the ACC playing, Wake Forest, Duke, and all those school, and UNC,
Yeah.
NC State, and then I ended up playing, for playing in the AAC with like Villanova, UConn, who were kind of the noticeable teams, and it was great because as well a lot of people didn't like the dynamic at Syracuse. And one thing that Syracuse was known for was a huge transfer rate.
Mhm.
So a couple of us transferred to teams like Lafayette, UConn as well. So, I kind of felt like I was making a good decision in the right step forward. And yeah, my time at Temple was great. Um, I played in about half the games. I had a couple injuries towards the end of the season and wasn't getting as much playing time. And then there was like this huge scandal, and the whole entire coaching staff at the end got fired.
Oh, that was your year. Yeah, I
That
remember
was
that.
my year.
Okay.
Yeah, with like Gleddy and Dave McWilliams and all of them. They all got. That was actually our last AAC game because I think we had gotten to the finals of the conference and lost to SMU.
Okay.
And yeah, there was like an altercation in Texas that got them fired. I think they went. I think they won. Yeah, but I'll say that for another time. But
Yeah.
yeah, it
It'll be
was
an off-air story.
yeah. And then there was a new guy appointed. I forget where he came from, but he was a goalkeeper coach, and he was one of the coaches that came with a lot of different players. So he was looking to rebrand, like kind of like re yeah rebrand the
Yeah.
Temple soccer program, but he wanted to do that by outsourcing. So he wanted to bring all his players
Yeah.
in, which kind of pushed the players out.
Mhm.
And again, I was at another crossroads where it was looking like no one who was kind of staying was really going to play, except for maybe one or two senior players who were in their senior year.
Mhm.
So and that's when I had to take a look at myself and say, these environments I'm in, is this what's going to really get me to the next level? Is this really what is gonna help my career more than stifling it? And I think at the time it was stifling.
Mm.
I remember, going back and playing my summer leagues and stuff like that, and I realized playing college soccer at a lot of times, especially at Temple, I was a lot worse than I was before coming in. And I
Mm.
didn't like that as well. So I made a decision to drop out, and this was, against the advice of my family. My friends were worried as well. They didn't think I was making a good decision. Um, and yeah, I had got in contact with um, this this agent through one of my good friends I used to play club soccer with, um, who played. I think he played at Rutgers Camden at the time. And yeah, I went to a couple tryouts. They liked me, and he was sending us to Italy. And this was one of these. I was worried as well because I thought this was one of these, agent schemes
Yeah.
where you had to, pay up front
Mm-hmm.
and they
And then
send
you
you
get there and
there.
there's no team or something. Yeah.
Yeah. So I did have to pay up front, which I kind of regret, but not at the same time because it wasn't a scheme. It was I just didn't do my research on Italy. I was doing my research on him and the teams he was sending us to and stuff like that, but I didn't do my research on Italy. Italy was a very corrupt, hostile environment, and I faced a lot of difficulty. I faced
Mm-hmm.
a lot of first time in my life faced very like overt levels of racism,
Mm-hmm.
which I wasn't expected, and yeah, it was quite tough. Me and my friend Vincenzo went over there, and we started off playing with some Serie D teams, which is the fourth division, and we were running circles around these kids. And then we went up to a Serie C team, about an hour outside of Turin, where we spent most of our time, and we did well as well there. The only problem is, like I said, um, one, the environment was very hostile. A lot of times, me and my friend were just left to sit out of training and
Wow.
watch, which was a very like mind-boggling experience.
Yeah.
Then um, yeah, they would stop us from training. So we were like, okay, we'll take this to the chin. We were like, okay, if they're gonna keep us from training, we still got to get a training on our own. So
Yeah.
we
And so all of this was happening simply it was the coaching staff was like racially profiling
yeah
you and saying you couldn't come into the training for that. Like that was the whole reason behind it.
yeah. So they would leave us out of some drills, um, and yeah. So obviously they didn't say it, but I think it was me. It was me, another guy who was, I think he was from Ghana,
Okay.
who set out, and my friend Vincenzo, and he was alienated because he was Italian American, but didn't speak any Italian, which was like a
A
cardinal
crime.
sin,
Yeah.
right? So he was left out as well, and it was quite tough. It was quite tough. Um, and even then, we would train on our own for the drills just to make up on the drills we weren't allowed in to play.
Hmm.
And we kind of let it fuel us. We're like, okay, if you're gonna sit us out of drills, we're gonna make sure we destroy everyone on the pitch, and we did. We did. I remember, and to be fair, some of the players were nice. Some of the coaching staff were nice, but the issue was it was kind of like the head coaches that were quite
Yeah.
had their pick of players and stuff like that. But yeah, it was a dog eat dog world out there. I remember quite early, I got hit with some late challenges. You know, I got hit with tackles, into my chest,
Mm.
into my ribs, like,
Yeah.
and I had to
Stuff
take
that
it.
just has no place in the game.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it was quite a mind-boggling experience, and at the end of the day, we ended up going to Germany, and because I had a friend who played for Jackson as well with Tyler, who had moved out there, and one of his I think his sister's boyfriend at the time was playing fourth division in Germany in
Hmm.
Berlin, and so he said he might have been able to help us. So we went to Berlin again on a whim. This time it was, we had no agent, no one helping us.
Yeah.
He was lucky enough that I knew him, so he let us stay at his place for a while, a while, and yeah, we were training with the team. They had just started their season, So they were not really. I don't think they were signing anyone else. But it was good. It was good. It was really good because we got to train with the team. We got to kind of get an inside look at low level professional football,
Hmm.
and it was a really good experience. I spent there. I think I was there from about maybe October to February, and um, luckily enough, I had at the time I had UK citizenship,
Hmm.
so I was able to stay out there for more than 3 months. But unfortunately, Vincenzo was not because he does not have a Italian passport or anything like
Yeah,
that.
just the American one. So he's got 90 days.
Yeah, so he had to go
Gotcha.
back earlier than I did. But yeah, I met some great people out there. I got in touch with this guy who was a really good strength and conditioning coach, which really helped me as well with my kind of mechanic and training and stuff like that outside of in the gym, which
Hmm.
was good. And this is where I started really seeing the importance of connections,
Yeah.
and like I said, I was just some knucklehead kid just on a journey.
Yeah.
I didn't for once think about, what if it didn't go well. I kind of only thought, well, this is a chance, so I can take it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think man, there's so much like in that you just said that I feel like we have to like go back like just a little bit, but like we'll still keep moving. Like I I completely agree with and I've talked about this on the pod before that there's a level of hard work that goes into it and there's a level of going out and making your own opportunity and making your own connections. But you hit a certain point, as you just mentioned, where you find that the connections is going to be that last piece that's going to get you into the next level. And but what I think is so important that people should take away from like your story that you're talking about is, and it's a little bit similar to mine, and I'm curious to see if you have a similar thought. I kind of felt like because my college soccer experience was, I don't want to say shitty, but like it had a lot of adversity in it. It forced me to transfer, it forced me to do things. It kind of set me up in a beneficial way to then going into this industry now, going into the pro game or the semi-pro game where you're going to face like trials where things aren't going to work out. You're going to be in teams where, like you said at Syracuse, where you're competing, but you're not getting the time you want to, or this situation isn't going to be the perfect thing for you. And then I can't even imagine what it would be like to then you have all these factors working against you when you're trying to become a professional, but then also to be in a place like Italy where then there's the other factor of just because of the color of your skin, now you're being, that's another layer that's added, another obstacle in your way. So I won't dare to say that you would appreciate being like racially abused. Like that's just something that shouldn't be in the game whatsoever. And I know Italy does have a reputation for that, but in a sense, maybe more so along the lines of what you went through in college. Do you feel like that kind of set you up for the grind now, like the journey that you've been on now, and you don't get so low on those lows when they happen?
Definitely. Definitely. I think it really it really gave me some thick skin, which is something I really needed. I think I was a good player, but I think mentally I was a bit, especially at that time, mentally I was easily what's the word? I kind of easily put off,
Mm,
if I felt like I was scared of rejection when I was growing up, especially my teens, and that really kind of hurt me from, basic things like, even before, getting to teams, it hurt me from, doing things I would do in training, and I, was scared to put in games because I was scared to fail and stuff like
yeah.
that. And so really, like I said, it really gave me some thick skin and really taught me that, failure is okay. Failure is only the way to get better.
Yeah.
And I'm glad it happened. Obviously, at the time, I thought it was partly the end of the world and stuff.
Hmm.
I'm really glad it happened, and it really helped me mentally and really gave me the confidence to really go for it. So yeah,
Yeah, man. I 100% agree. I was speaking about this when I sort of talked about me going on a bunch of different trials in Germany, and because I was the same way as you. Like anytime I would try out for a team, that I would just have so much anxiety with that. Like you want to do so well, you're so afraid of getting rejected or that failure that sometimes you don't feel like you're then playing your best, putting your best performance out when you actually need it. And so I sort of switched my mentality and I would go into these trials and and this isn't for everyone, so I know I don't necessarily recommend this, but I kind of went into it with like, there's probably going to be 1,000 trials that I go on before I find that one team. You know what I mean? There's going to be countless ones where I fail, and the probability is higher that this is going to be one of the ones that's a failure than a success. And that could be because I play poorly, but it also could be for a million other reasons. Like you and I know, like you and we were just talking about previously, you could perform fantastic and one person in one board seat is like, we want to go with someone else, or you don't have a passport, or you don't have XYZ. And so I would go into trials and I just changed my mindset, and it kind of allowed me to play a little bit freer. You still want to perform your best, but you have to take that pressure off a little bit to try and allow yourself to have that success that you really want to have.
Mhm. No, it's true. It's definitely true. I think it's very important to really, take what you learn and put it into game and have this kind of sense of fearlessness,
Yeah.
and I think that's one thing I had to get comfortable with was making mistakes. You know, for me as a kid, I was known as a passer. Yet with my dad and my dad is the only one who really seen it because he was the one that really trained me. Is I'm I'm more of a dribbler, but I never wanted to do it because I was always scared of you know getting the ball taken from me and
Hmm.
messing up and stuff like that. And I was usually just playing it safe. And I realized that I wasn't going to learn. I wasn't going to take my game to the next level playing it safe.
Yeah.
Especially when you do venture out and really push yourself to go to different places. I had to really stand out. So that's I think one thing that I took from that. I wanted to make sure to see one. Look at a piece of game and stuff like that, and really stand out. How can I stand out? How can I look different from everybody else? What is someone what are the mistakes some people are doing that I can exceed at or succeed in and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
I think your mindset towards it is really good because I think it really makes it okay to fail. And I think once you get that in your mind, you can only really improve, exponentially actually.
Yeah. It's one of the most important things that I had to learn. And kind of like you mentioned, I didn't always have it. Your relationship with failure in trying to become a professional footballer is probably one of the most important relationships that you're going to have, because if you're a guy or if you're a girl trying to become a professional footballer, and every time you face a setback or you face a failure or you go on a trial and they don't pick you and it's the end of the world for you and you can't bounce back, then this is gonna be a short journey for you,
Yeah.
unfortunately. And it doesn't matter how good you are. It really unfortunately doesn't. The talent component is so important. You do have to be talented, but at the end of the day, it's such a small component of it. There's so much more that goes into having success in this. And a lot of it just comes down to how many failures are you willing to take? How many times are you willing to get punched in the mouth and keep coming back for more? And, it's kind of like you said before, maybe that's part of why people are skeptical when we talk about our journey, because they're like, how do you keep just coming back for more and coming back for more when it's been so difficult? And I don't know if we really have an answer for them besides just, I just love the game too much and I don't know what else. I don't know
No,
how else to do anything else. Like
no. I'm with you there because I realized quite early, especially when I made the decision to go to Europe, not many people are going to understand.
mhm,
Not many people are going to understand why. They won't because they won't understand how much we love it, you know? Because a lot of people aren't willing to make the sacrifice to, I've been out here in the UK for a year now.
Mhm.
I haven't seen my mom, dad, sister. I haven't, this is the first Christmas I've really missed. I haven't been with them. Again, this is probably the next Christmas,
Yeah.
2 Christmas in a row where I haven't seen my parents. It's probably 2 years since I've seen my parents. And a lot of people, either don't love it that much or they're not willing or not dedicated enough to really make that sacrifice. And that's one thing you really brought up in the beginning. It's you have to be willing to make the sacrifice. That's the only way, especially as a soccer player or footballer. You don't have the luxury of setting your own schedule. You don't have the luxury of going on vacation, going on holidays when you want to go, or
Mhm.
even seeing your loved ones, your girlfriends, and stuff like that. It's a sacrifice, and it's something that not many people are willing to do.
Yeah. I think is really at the core is why I started putting out content like this, was because I wanted to kind of shed a more real light on what it's like. And I'm not starting this podcast to complain about how difficult it is. I'm starting it because I would 100% agree with you that if somebody was to ask me, what's the one thing, what's the one secret to being able to have success and trying to become a professional footballer, is I would say sacrifice. I really would. I think, there's so many things that go into it, but it's, are you willing to sacrifice your money, your time, your relationships with your friends and family, a lifestyle? You know what I mean? If I was the type of person who compared myself to the friends around me, I would be screwed because, right now I was over in Germany and I was making $0 and 0 cents, but I was just chasing it. And all my friends around me, they have full-time jobs, they have apartments, they have houses, they have girlfriends, they have all these things.
Yeah, no, it's true.
And I'm like, I'm still just chasing the dream.
Yeah.
And and money's such a big part of it too. Like, uh the there's so much money that you're gonna have to spend for flights and trials and housing and food. And it's exactly like you said, there's no schedule that you get to set for yourself. You can't say, oh, I'd like to trial with you this week. It's like, no, you trial when they have an opening for you, and that's it. And like, there's no sick days, there's no, I'd like to take 2 weeks off to go to the Bahamas. If you're in the season, you're in the season. If you want to go on vacation, well, okay, don't come back. Like, I don't know what to tell you. So I'm happy that you brought up that word, because that's it. I feel like it's kind of at the definition, it's at the core of what it takes to do what you're doing. And I haven't even been overseas as long as you have. That's another thing, like being away from mom and pops for that long. It's brutal, I'm sure.
Oh man, it's it's been this past year has been a roller coaster. Like I said, I think you know you're right there. I quite like your content, and I remember I was so excited seeing the 11. The podcast is because it's very. I wish I had this when I was young. Because everyone has access to different drills, different strength and conditioning training. But one thing you don't get to see as a young player unless you're in these fancy youth academies, or
Yeah.
if your mom or dad were pro, is the mental aspect, what it takes off the pitch to help you on the pitch, which is the mentality, the sacrifice, the dedication, dealing with rejection and stuff like that. And that's all things I had to learn. And
Yeah.
I learned old, like I was 20 when I really started, which is, if you ask most people, I'm already behind the 8 ball. I'm
Yeah.
22 now as well. And you know, a lot of people would have quit. And unfortunately, a lot of friends that, I never thought would have. And you're right. If I'm comparing myself to my graduating class, they graduated this May. So I have all these friends, posting these graduation pictures and stuff like that. With their 4-year degrees, they're going to grad school, they're getting jobs. and I'm, you know,
Mm.
I was playing semi-pro, working part-time at a trampoline park in, in the, you know, in the UK.
Bro, it's crazy. Like I think if somebody were to just kind of like look in on my life with, with like a magnifying glass or something, they'd be like, because I'm in that phase that you were in, like right now. Like I had, and this is what's frustrating too, but I've had to change my mentality. I've had to get better with it. I was supposed to go back to Germany. I had put in my time in Germany. I had sacrificed. I had gone on trial after trial after trial. I had found a higher level opportunity for myself. I was supposed to go back in March, and then boom. The one one of the few things I thought would never like be, I thought there'd be a lot of things that would maybe lead me to not becoming a professional. Never would I have said a global pandemic would be part of it.
Oh
And
my god.
and then
I'm the same.
it's crazy, bro. And so then boom, that opportunity taken off the table. And now here I sit a few months later, and I'm training as much as I can. I'm waking up early, I'm training 7 a.m. so then I can go and I can work the rest of the day and I can save as much money as I can. So the moment that it's time to go again, I have the funds and I'm locked and loaded and I'm ready to go. But I do think about it sometimes. It's like all this money that I'm pooling together, I'm just like conceptualizing it as like how it's going to fund flights and housing and things to like go back and play football. It's not, you know, so I can buy an apartment over here. It's not so I can save it, or it's how can I put it back into the game? And oh man, it's crazy.
No, it's the same thing for me as well. You know, that February when I left Germany and I went back to living with mom and dad, you know, it was tough as well because I felt like I failed. You know, I was like, felt like I was starting back from ground one.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I had to take that and really channel it. And like I said, my first time in Europe, my parents didn't agree with it at all. At all. They were, you know, they were quick to be like, "Oh, just come home," you know? It's every comic, just come home."
Yeah.
And, you know, they didn't mean to, they didn't mean to be in like a nasty way. They just they didn't obviously at that time as well, they didn't want to see me fail either,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And I remember when I came back and they realized I'd taken 3 jobs and decided to train every day, then they realized how serious I was. You know, they
Yeah.
thought that I'd come home, quit, go back to school, get my degree, and I said, "No." I was like, "Mom, I
I'm
came back
doubling down. Yeah.
within the first week, I had 2 jobs, and then within the second week, I had all 3." And they said, "Wow, you've been here not even 6 days yet, and you're already planning on going back." Like, I was making arrangements like that. I was working, I was working at my local Under Armour doing a shipment, so that started at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was working at LA Fitness in the evenings, while also like training kids in the Princeton area as
Mm-hmm.
well. And I was doing that every day. You know, there wasn't a day that I didn't have at least one job. And yeah, I was dog tired, of course. I wouldn't recommend it,
No,
but I
mate,
realized
I'm
that.
exhausted right now. I just did the past, I don't even know, 6 7 days of this past week. So I feel you. I know the struggle.
Oh, yeah, and that's one thing I like as well. Like, you know, I can share this with you, who's, you know, we're on the same mission.
Yeah.
It's great when, you know, you find someone as well who's going through the same things, and it was tough. You know, I used to fall asleep all the time because I was dog tired. I
Mm-hmm.
used to get back home at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night. I had to get up at 4, start, you know, the next day.
Yeah.
It was rough, and you know, but I always knew, you know, it was worth it. I needed to raise as much money as I could in a short space of time from February to about, I think, late August. Raise enough money as I could to get me myself to the UK again.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I believed in, you know, intentionality. the law of attraction, what you set your mind to, if you really go for it 100%, doors will open. And I'm a product of that. I came to England with a lot more money than I thought I would,
Mm-hmm.
just because, I saved. I lived at home, so I didn't have to pay anything. I saved. I was always on a clean eating diet, so I didn't really, spend too much money eating out and stuff like that. And yeah, I just saved as much as I could. Went out there. I stayed with family. I slept on my aunt's couch for a month, and it was funny because she's my aunt, but the first time I met her was when I landed in the UK.
And now you're
so,
staying on her couch.
so it was cool because it distracted me getting to know more of my family and stuff like that. But even then, of course, I felt alone.
Yeah.
I was in a new place, doing new things, and I remember after the Lincoln City trials, like that was the reason why I went. And after that, I was like, oh, well, what do I do now? I can't. What's the point of me coming back? Because if I come back now, this is the peak time, especially around preseason and like you said, January.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the peak times where to really get into preseasons and get contracts signed and stuff like that, especially in the summer. So I told myself, oh, there's no point of going back home because I wouldn't have any, I wouldn't be close to where I wanted to be. So I decided to, obviously I realized I couldn't stay on my aunt's couch for the entire
Yeah.
time. So I also had to get a job. And luckily enough, like I said, I made connections through my aunt who, she knew a girl who was working at a trampoline park. Um, and I got a job. I was working, I got the job in about 2 days, 3 days. I was working 5 days a week, 6 days a week. And I mean, one thing in the UK is that the it's really easy to make a living, even working part time,
Mm-hmm.
which is good. So I was able to work as much as I can, still in preseason training. Um, I was lucky enough that I was out with my aunt's partner who went to Cambridge, and he knew a couple people. He knew a couple ex professionals, and he was actually like talking about him and stuff like that. And lo and behold, one of the players he knew was at like a coffee shop in Reddit when we were walking. We were just getting supplies for my aunt's shop that she owned, and he was like, "Oh, do you want to meet him?" I was like,
Yeah.
"Sure." I was like, "Of course." So we go and talk, and he was an ex Reading player who also played for Bristol City
Mm-hmm.
and played a little bit in Italy as well. And so he had connections with a couple of semi-pro teams in the area, which again, like I said, it was just by chance. I was walking with him, getting supplies, and lo and behold, like he said, he was in a coffee shop, and he either, he stopped us, and so the next week he was nice enough to take me to training, go to preseason, and I did well. I signed a semi-professional contract, and yeah, that's where it started. I was playing for a little team in Wickham while working at the what you call it while working at the
Trampoline
trampoline
park.
park.
Yeah. Yeah. That's for anyone listening, this is an important part that I think sometimes gets overlooked that we've been talking about for a while here, but the training is important. The gym work, getting to the pitch, all those types of things are important. But a lot of times I think younger players, maybe more so, think that's where it stops. And it's like, it's exactly what Khedive just said there. He's also working 6 days a week to be able to support him being able to train and being able to work out and being able to play. I mean, the unfortunate reality of most players' sort of trajectory is it's not going to start with your first contract is going to be a fully professional contract. Or even if it is, it might not be a contract that's really a livable wage, or you might have to go out and get another job. A lot of times it's going to start with a semi pro contract that's a few bucks here and there, but you really need money coming in to be able to support yourself doing that. And like we said too, it's if you're back home and you're looking to travel overseas, it's money to be able to support yourself until you can get that right opportunity. And it's the sum of all of the parts, right? It's not just like one thing that, oh, I train 2 times a day, 7 days a week. I mean, okay, fair enough. That's good, but it's, can you also eat right? Can you sleep right? Can you work so that you have the money? And I try and stress these things a lot. It's not just this like one dimensional thing in you being able to really chase the dream. And you just outline that for us. Like that's what it really is going to take.
No, it's true. And diet was very important because I also had to realize that, I had to do a lot of injury prevention.
Hmm.
I had to do a lot of research, a lot of YouTube videos, best way to, avoid injuries, of injury prevention. Because for me as well, I'm a player who hasn't made it yet. So I'm not in a safe place. So me getting injured for 6 months would be the worst thing that could happen to me.
Yeah.
So I had to make sure that, I was training hard, training right, but making sure I wasn't overtraining, making sure I was eating healthy, eating right, making sure I was doing physio work for things, because I have bad ankles and stuff like that. Making sure I was doing my ankle exercises every other day or every day, every morning, and making sure, I gave myself the best chance I could to give my all every time I'm on the pitch. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what it comes down to, is just there's a lot of things that are out of our control, but we have to just take care of every single thing that we can control. Because like I said, if an opportunity comes, a calling, and they say, hey, can you be here in a week, you know, do you have the money to be able to do that? Are you ready to be able to do that? Are you fit? All those things, like, because there's not going to be, oh, can you push it back? Like, can we reschedule? It's when opportunity knocks, it's, you either got to answer the call or it's going to pass you by. So it's important, like we said, just all of those different things. So we talked about just when you were at Lincoln City. Walk us through what was after Lincoln City. Kind of bring us forward to now.
Okay. So after Lincoln City was about 6.5 months of playing semi-professional football,
Hmm.
um, which was great. I got to learn more about what English football was like, the level of physicality, which like I remember my first preseason. I think two teammates had broken legs. One had done their ACL. Like
Oh.
it wasn't necessarily the brute force, but the tackles were absolutely insane. Oh, so I had to get used to that.
Hmm.
I had to make sure I was fit for that and make sure my knees could handle all that. So I did. Um, During my games, especially in England, it was great because a lot of teams who, especially in like League One, League Two, even the Championship, they do take from lower leagues and semi-pro leagues. Um, yeah, I had a couple um, different teams who were coming to my matches scouting. I think one Watford. Um, I had Crystal Palace come to some, Chelsea U23s and stuff like that. But I think, well, the one team that really showed interest was Wycombe Wanderers, which was very local. And like I said, it was a team that had not a big budget and they relied on local recruiting. So I was very fortunate again then. I've been in the right place, right time. I did well. I put myself in the position. And yeah, I was being scouted. And my trials were to start in late February. But of course,
That is right when the world turned upside down.
yep. And again, that really impacted my opportunity because at the time they're still in League One. They were top of the table,
Hmm.
so they were looking to get promoted into the championship. And you know, personally, I was hoping that they didn't, because then I knew, they would be looking for more, again, high profile players and stuff like that. Um, I had to, but then obviously the pandemic happened, so I had to keep training, keep fit.
Hmm.
I wasn't working, so I had more time to train. So I was just training on my own, running, training in my back garden at my flat where I was living and stuff like that, just every day as much as I could. And yeah, they ended up having a restart, and through the playoffs, they got promoted to the championship for the first time, which is obviously great for Wickham.
Hmm.
It wasn't too great for me though, which did quite hurt my chances a lot. Um,
So did you still end up getting to do that trial?
yes, I did. Yes, I
Yeah.
spent about 3 weeks at Wickham, and they really liked me, but unfortunately, they decided to go with more. They said more physically imposing
Hmm.
defenders. At that time, I was being looked at as an outside back, and I couldn't really be upset. They had taken a couple people who were already playing in other championship teams, so I knew that was gonna happen, which I wasn't quite upset about this time around.
Yeah.
But it was a good experience, and I kind of used that leverage to help me kind of redirect my focus into different ways, and I looked towards Scotland. So after the trials, I sent some of my CVs, my updated CVs to Scotland, a couple different teams, a couple championship teams, a couple League One teams, and a couple League Two teams. And like I said, it's all about research that I've done on myself. I realized that Scotland was a really good place for foreigners who were looking to really develop a CV and really develop, a name for themselves in
Hmm.
professional football. So I knew that was a good avenue, and it was quite good because a lot of players would start in the lower leagues of Scotland, like League Two, League One, go to um, a league, like a English league team, like maybe Championship, and then move up into the Premier League.
Hmm.
Some notable people who have done that is Andy Robertson, who's
Mm.
arguably now regarded as one of the best left backs in the world. He started at Scottish League Two, played one season in Scottish League Two, then played one season in the Premiership with Dundee United, and then went to Hull, who was in the Premiership at the time. And so again, I thought of myself, I was like, yeah, it's a pretty daunting task. I'm moving to another country, but I told myself, if I could beat the odds and, you know, make it to a top two, top three team in college soccer, I could definitely do it again in
Yeah.
Scotland. So I came here again, stayed in a hotel, burning through money that I saved up. Um, and I spent the last 2 weeks on trial with a couple different teams. But I decided to stick with and it's a little town about 25 minutes from Glasgow.
Hmm.
Um, Again, uh, rocked up at the club. Luckily enough to meet the chairman who was there, setting up cameras for the next season and stuff like that. And told him a little bit about myself. And he said, if I was busy this tonight, I said no. And he told me to come back for training at 7. And that's what I did. Came back for training. And I kept getting asked by the coaches to come back. And yeah, I think last training session, which is good. And yeah, so I'm quite, I think now starting my professional journey, which is quite good. It's been a long process,
Hmm.
but it's just the beginning now. So I'm very excited.
Yeah. I It's interesting. I remember one of the conversations you and I had actually had when I was speaking to you when I was over in Germany, is you had said that you know, to send emails and send messages out to coaches, but a really good way to get opportunities. And you said some of the best opportunities that you had created for yourself were just rocking up to the club, seeing who's there, introducing yourself and saying, "Hey, can I come and train?" And that idea, along with kind of what you just spoke about of just picking a country and flying there and then seeing what happens, how important do you think that is? Like, again, it's a big risk, but I think the reward there is so great that it really is worth it. Versus, you know, if you're an American sitting over an American waiting for that perfect chance, a lot of times it's not going to come. So you have to just go out there and make it for yourself.
No, it's very true. I think one thing I had to learn as well is how to sell myself,
Hmm.
how to make myself look appealing to teams, to coaches, and stuff like that. And I started obviously with the college recruiting process, going to do different colleges, then also coming to, you know, Germany, Italy, and I obviously again now in Scotland,
Hmm.
a lot of people would be shocked about about doing it because they wouldn't think about doing it. They maybe think it's too like intrusive or maybe crazy. But my philosophy is if you never ask, there's always going to be a no.
Yeah.
And I remember, even when I was in Berlin, I had walked up to Hertha Berlin's youth school, U23s academy, and I remember we had spoken to someone at the door who had literally sat us down in front of the U23s coach in a matter of 5 minutes. We were, and he asked us, he was like, "Oh, so you guys are looking to train?" And we said, "Yeah." And at the time, he said, "Okay, we are training in about an hour." And me and I did it with my friend Vincenzo at the time. We looked at each other and we were like, "What?" He goes, "Yeah, I'm training in an hour if you want to come to training." And we were like, we didn't obviously we didn't think it was going to be this
That
easy.
quick. Yeah.
Yeah, because we were people off the street, and you'd be surprised how many doors open just by just asking. Of course, worst thing to say is no,
Yeah.
but you're already on the outside anyway, so it doesn't really change much, does it?
Yeah.
And like I said, all it takes is one, yeah, and make sure you take the chance when you get it.
Yeah. That
That's what
was
happened. Yeah.
that. There's a story that I have that's like similar to that, because this was something that's like been hard for me because I'm more of a shy introverted person until I feel more comfortable with a person. And so doing things like that, it's tough for me.
Mhm.
So I had kind of set up a trial with a club, but I hadn't spoken to the coach, and it was in Germany. And like the other component with that is, you know, you don't know who speaks any English or who speaks German, like that type of thing. So I showed up and I kind of thought I saw who the coach was, but I wasn't positive. And like nobody came up to me because I was kind of off to the side of the pitch. They hadn't started training yet. Nobody came up to me to say anything to me. And so I remember like just being so nervous. I was like, now they're all walking up to the pitch like, should I go up, like should I say something, or like should I just leave? Because they clearly saw me, like maybe they just don't want me here, or I don't know. And I just remember thinking, you know, you're here in Germany, so don't leave anything like unfinished. Like don't get back on a plane to America and think, oh, what if I had actually tried for that one trial, like what if I had done it? So I mustered up all the courage that I could and I walked across the pitch. Everyone in the team is watching me. They're like, who the hell is this guy? And I come up and like I rehearsed in German, like what I was going to say over and over. And I said it to him. He was like, oh, yeah, Brendan, I remember, you know, the chairman had said something about you coming tonight. Yeah, let me show you where to get changed. And I was like, oh, thank God that I did this. Like, but you make such an important point. It's about selling yourself, and it's about, once again, bringing this back full circle, it's about taking the risk that other people aren't willing to take. That's how you get that little extra percentage that others aren't going to get.
No, it's true. It's true. And doing things like that, I have a bit of experience now, but like you, I had a fear of public speaking of any platform. Like, going on stage, speaking in front of 2 to 3 people was frightening for me. So going up to coaches and heads of, chairmen of clubs, I was terrified. But like I said, I had kind of had the same mentality you did. I wanted to, especially the biggest part of my journey, or biggest reason why I took the leap is I told myself, if I don't put my all into this, I know for the rest of my life, I'll be sitting back at age 40, 50,
Yep.
saying, what if?
Mm-hmm.
What if I had done that? What if I had spoken to this person? What if I just asked this person instead of just sitting there and, wishing? So that's what I had to get comfortable quickly.
Yeah.
Just going up to people, you know, feeling like I'm being intrusive, but yet, doing it with a purpose. And you'll be surprised how many doors open up just, like I said, just from you focusing and really chasing what you're looking for. And I'm really glad you did that. Like, because it seems so nerve wracking, and all he said was, "Yeah, of course. Like, I'll show you it."
Yeah. Because you kind of have to like reverse engineer the conversation a little bit and think like, what if somebody had come up to me, right? If I was in that situation and some kid comes up to me and is like, hey, can I train? I feel like I probably would have let that kid train because I would have been impressed with the moxie that he has to come up and do that. And so that's how I also kind of helped myself. But really, it's just about throwing yourself into the fire and just doing things. There were so many things about, which I'm sure you can attest to, the first time when you were living overseas. There's so many things that you just have to kind of do and figure out that I had never done before in America. But as you do it more and more, you just become more comfortable. Like, I know for me, a big thing in Germany was like figuring out getting to these trials, all the public transportation system. Like, I grew up in a suburb, so I would drive everywhere. I never took public transportation, but in Germany, most people get around that way. So I had to figure out how to get everywhere with a different language, all those types of things, and that's a small piece of it. Um, yeah, it's just it really is like you said, just putting yourself out there, and then you do it once, and then the second time becomes a little bit easier, and so on and so forth.
It's true. It's true. And even then, like I said, I got that. I got the idea of just walking up the club because you know I was thinking I was just trying to go through the best way to sell myself, how to go about networking, how to go about the more executive side of soccer or professional football because I
Mm-hmm.
had no experience, don't have an agent, never did. And to be honest, I can't bring myself, at least yet, to trust someone to really be an agent because I
Mm-hmm.
don't I don't
Yeah.
know anyone, and from experience, from player, luckily I have friends now that are playing the MLS, playing here overseas, and they tell me the importance of agents, how they can make and they can also break your career and stuff like that. So,
Yeah.
you know, I'm want to be. I'm still yet haven't. I don't have an agent, so I had to do it all myself. And yeah, I remember it's just reaching out to people. I remember I got a trial with one agent through one of my friends I played with. He played at Trenton Catholic in high school before going to um, like the United States national team training camp down
Mm-hmm.
in Bradenton. Matthew Olashunde, I think his name. Yeah, his name is. Now he plays in the championship with Rotherham.
Mm-hmm.
He had gone. So he played 1 year at Trenton Catholic. I think he got, but he was also playing for Red Bulls. So he got seen and went down to Bradenton. Went to the U17 World Cup with like Christian Pulisic and Weston McKinney and all those guys. And from that tournament, from that U17 World Cup, got signed to Manchester United's youth academy.
Mm.
So I met up with him last summer in Manchester, and he was also giving me being able to, like I said, we were acquaintances. We had played against each other. We had a mutual friend growing up, but like I haven't seen him since 15.
Mm-hmm.
And just having the courage to ask him questions. How was your experience being at Manchester United, training
Yeah.
with the first team? How was your experience dealing with agents, living abroad, dealing with pressures of playing, not playing, injuries and stuff like that? And lucky enough, he was a nice guy who really helped me out a lot, gave me a lot of advice, and that's one thing I think people should really, really do. If anyone has been in this situation or done the things you are going through, don't be afraid to ask. And I think, like I said, one of these platforms is a great way to really be a learning
Mm-hmm.
or a bit of education for people who are either going to start or like us going through the motions already deep into the journey.
Yeah,
So yeah.
exactly. Yeah. I think this is kind of a perfect segue, and we can sort of like, this will be our last kind of topic to cap us off for the evening. Cause I know we've been going for a little bit, but um, I think in early from when I met you, like you mentioned it before, it was kind of brief, like speaking to other people who are on the same path as you and on the same journey as you is a really eye-opening and refreshing experience, because I remember like the first time you and I kind of spoke about what we were trying to do, like I said it, and usually there's this reaction that you get from people. And it's like it depends on who the person is. Sometimes it's sort of like oh, like that's nice. That's a fun thing that you're doing. And
Yeah.
sometimes it's kind of like oh, all right. But you just understood it right away. And like everything that I was saying, you understood. And as we continue to talk more and more, which is why I'm so happy that I was finally able to get you onto an episode with me and for us to be able to talk, and why I'm so happy that now you're finally like reaping those rewards and having that success in your career. Because as I've just, and not even in a super close way to you, like you and I chat from time to time, but I'm just like happy that it's working for you, because I knew like you were one of the ones that was going to make it because of everything we've laid out here. Like there was nothing that was going to stop you from getting there. There just wasn't. Whether it took moving home, working 3 jobs, moving to Scotland, being in a terrible situation in Italy, Germany, like everywhere. And it's been awesome for me, like to have that little bit before we even hopped on the podcast where you told me like that it's progressed sort of in Scotland and that it's about to happen. Like it, it's dope, man. It's awesome. And I truly mean that. And the other reason why it's so awesome is because I think you and I are similar in that we're competitive. But like when I've talked, like I've never felt like jealous. I'm a little bit jealous of you. I'm not gonna lie, because I'm not playing football right now. But um, like it's never been like a spiteful or like envious thing. Like and I've asked you for help, and you've always been humble and always helpful with me. And kind of a bit how we got to speaking further was I did that exact same thing with you. I don't know if you remember this, but I messaged you on Instagram and I was like, hey man, like I'm over in Germany. Like I was wondering if, you had any help or you had any advice to give me. And you were like, yeah, man, like I did this and tried this, that, and the other thing. And I remember I think you gave me the number of a coach. And I don't know if I ever got to trial with that team, but I remember speaking to that coach, and like that's just another connection. That's another
Yeah.
person to kind of add to our contact book. And it's so important, like we talk about a lot in here, is connections. And I really kind of want to hit home this part at the end with how a connection doesn't always have to be what you think it is. And you've really laid it out for us perfectly as well. Is a lot of times it's teammates that you've played with, it's guys that you just kind of know of, and you have some sort of mutual friend, or you have something in common, and you start a conversation. And a lot of times people in this game are a lot nicer and a lot more accommodating than you think they're going to be. Like I remember I messaged you and I was a little bit nervous because I was like, what if he looks at this and is like, who the hell is this guy? Like, what do you want? Like, but yeah, like, so you and I had first met in just a random night that who knows if it ever
Yeah,
happened.
in Jackson, right?
Yeah, in Jackson. In shouts out to TJ. Hopefully he's listening
Yeah,
to this. Tyler Johnson. We've shouted him out a few times, but him and I played college together, and he was playing in Jackson. He, I think, is from the same area that you're from, and you guys both are kind of in. That's like the club that's closest to your home.
Mhm.
And he was just texting me. He was like, "Hey, like, you want to come out and train with my team tonight? Like, um, it might be an opportunity for you for the summer if you're still around." And I was like, "Yeah, like, I'm only here for a little bit more. I think this was right before I was supposed to go to Australia." And as I'm walking up, he's like, "Oh yeah, and this is my buddy Khedive, and he played like here, here, here." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, like what's up?" And then you and I got to talking, and then we trained a little bit, and we played on the same team together. And like I said, it was a 1 in a million chance. Who knew that we were both going to be in the same place, same time? You even on this side of the hemisphere, you know, you're
Yeah.
always in Europe and that type of thing. And then boom, like that's a connection. And now we're on a podcast together, and now we kind of are following each other's story a little bit. So I know that was very long winded, but for the audience that's listening, is don't think a connection is this thing that just comes in a very straight and narrow box. You know, it's whoever you know, it's whoever you bump into, it's whoever you meet. A connection can be really anything. And too many times people think like, oh, I need to know the sporting director of a club. No, it could be, you know, like I know Khedive and Khedive knows me, and one day he's somewhere and gives a recommendation to a coach, or vice versa.
Mhm.
And he could do that with countless other players in his network or coaches that he's played for or knows. And, you know, I could do the same as well with people that I know. So, yeah, man, like I said, I'm buzzing for you. I'm happy, and I'm happy that I got to have you on because I think this is going to be an awesome episode.
No, I'm really glad I got to do this. And like I said, I remember when you first followed me in the 11 podcast. And I was like, oh my, because I remember I was thinking to myself, I was like, I wanna be able to like give back somehow,
Hmm.
or something like this. I remember when when you followed me on Instagram, I was like, yes, like, oh, I was all for it. I was like, oh, this is the great. I was like, this is one of the greatest things I've ever seen. And I was like, I have, I have to be a part. I have to at least. I was
Yeah.
like, oh, I was so happy. I was like, oh yes,
It was
yes,
because it really was perfect because I remember as I was brainstorming things, I was like, I want to have Khedive on an episode. And then you kind of mentioned to me, you're like, hey, you know, if you ever would want to, I would definitely be up for it. And I was like, no, 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 for sure. Like I was already planning you. It's just a matter of time. Um, yeah, man. And I think, listen, we got into a lot today, but there we could do definitely a part two of this, and I hope that we can one day and continue to do the content. And so
definitely.
for anyone out there who's listening and wants to like follow, Khedive also shares a little bit of content on kind of his Instagram and his stories. Um, where can they maybe find your stuff? Like, what's your Instagram if they want to follow you and maybe follow your career a little bit?
My Instagram is, I gotta look it up. I don't even know it. It's just Khedive McIntosh. Just my name in all lowercase.
Dope.
Yeah,
Simple enough.
yeah,
Yeah, well, I mean, we'll have all this stuff. We'll definitely chop up some content from this one and have all of his socials and stuff tagged in as this episode goes live as well. But I'm excited, man. I think this is a good one. Did we miss
uh,
anything? Is there anything else that you wanna add for us?
no, honestly, I think I've said it all. I think I could talk forever about football and stuff like this,
Yeah.
but I'm really glad to be a part of this podcast, and I'm really excited to see where your career takes off to and stuff like that. And even just the other day, I was watching your individual training sessions, and I was like, oh, the next time I'm back in the States, like I gotta hit you up for some training. Definitely,
Yeah,
definitely.
man. Or next time I'm over in Europe, we gotta make it happen.
Oh,
We'll do it.
definitely,
We'll do it.
definitely.
It's funny that you mentioned that. I just had another friend who I played in college with. He messaged me. He's like, "Oh, that training, it looks quality, man." I'm like, "Yeah, thank you." And I've had a couple people that they've messaged me and I played with them in college, and they're like, dude, you've gotten so much better. And I'm like, well, I would hope so. Like from when you played me, in college, like I hope, the goal is to each year you get a little bit better, a little bit
Oh,
better.
sure.
It's funny that you mentioned that, but all right. Khedive, thank you so much for being in the 11 with us today. I appreciate it. And to all those out there listening, thank you as well.